to boost composition and diversity. And so we are pleased that we've gathered some very remarkable leaders around this issue. I think they will all give you some very powerful information that can help gauge and have you contemplate how you might want to contribute to this effort. But why is this important? Well, corporate governance includes the corporate boards of directors, those directors that are responsible for appointing CEOs and appointing the executive elected commissioned officers to the companies are key players in defining how a company operates in so many ways. And you are going to hear some incredible information that's been gathered by the Latino Corporate Directors Association, Esther Aguilera, and then you will see what the impact is on our daily lives. It's a very powerful conversation. And so today, if we take a look at the numbers, you will see that Latinos have a long way to go to improve that. And this year, fortunately, the California legislature adopted some legislation in AB 979 that was recently signed by Governor Newsom. And that legislation makes California the first state that will require the corporate headquarters, those corporations that are headquartered in California, it requires them to have a diversity on their board of directors, and there's a formula that we'll be talking about how that gets applied. And so then the key question is, since we're so far behind as a community on the representation on these boards, what is it that we can all do to try to work on solving that particular initiative? And so we have, again, a very outstanding panel. The way we're going to work this is we have every panel member introducing themselves, and then they will talk about this issue in particular. And then we're going to get into a series of areas or questions that we'll be discussing. And then 15 minutes before the session is completed, we will have questions from the audience. And as you can see from your feature, you can jot the questions into the chat area, and the questions will be relayed to us. And then we'll have those questions shared with our panel members. Again, we have some very distinguished people that have joined us from all over. And so we're very, very happy to have them join us. And so why don't we start with Esther Aguilera, who is the President CEO of the Latino Corporate Directors Association, a very strong and powerful element in this national conversation about how is it that Latinos can get equity in the corporate boardroom. Esther?
Thank you, Jose. I'm very, very happy to be here and for the California Hispanic Chamber to host this. Mentioned, I'm Esther Aguilera, and I'm president of the Latino Corporate Directors Association. So our association is fairly new. It was formed by Latinos that serve on corporate boards because the numbers were so small that they wanted to do something about it. And so what we are doing, and we're made up of current and former Latino CEOs, corporate directors, and we're creating a pipeline to prepare C-suite and other business leaders for the corporate boardroom. Today, I will share with you two things. One is, how are we faring? What do the numbers say? What's happening in California? But more importantly, how can we galvanize and do something about it? So we're going to get started with the slide. So Jillian, if you can, we already have the first one. So as a backdrop, we all know the numbers. We're, 18+% of the population, 16 million. Our GDP is 2.6 trillion. We contribute 25% of GDP to this nation, and 63% actually 83% of new entrants to the workforce are Latinos. So as Jose mentioned at the top, corporate boards, you have, we need to be at the decision-making table because what gets discussed impacts so much and impacts business and impacts you. And certainly corporate America could be teaming up with Hispanic businesses even more, but these issues need to be brought up in the boardroom. So going to the next slide, just sharing with you some national figures. So Jillian, if you can advance the slide. We're going to go quickly to the one after that, Jillian, because basically the bottom line is that our numbers on boards, and the stats might be a little small, but the gist is that we are less than 3%. We hold less than 3% of board seats on all the country's 1,000 largest company boards. And our trend on boards has not changed. Let's move to the next one. So where are we nationally as it compares to other groups? As you can tell here, we're 18% of the population, and this is the Fortune 500. So we hold 3.8%. We are the least represented of any other group, yet our might and contributions to the marketplace are the biggest of any other group. Jillian will move on to the next slide. So we did some research in California. As you know, Jose talked about AB 979, and that's a bill to add racial and ethnic diversity to corporate boards. But before that bill, California has a gender bill as well that would require companies to have women on boards, and that passed in September 2018. Our biggest concern with that bill is that, it's going to end up focusing on white women, and we were very concerned, and unless it's very intentional, that we would be left behind. So we set out to look at the data, and we researched all of the women. There were 511 women that were appointed to California boards between the time the governor signed that bill in 2018 and the end of last year. And what we found was that, nearly 78% of the women appointed were Caucasian. We had 11% Asian, 5.3% Black, and only 3.3% Latinas. And we're going to move to the next slide. Of course, this is in a state where Latinos are 40% of the population. So if we move to the next slide, another California slide. Jillian, we have one more slide after this. Thank you. And hopefully you can see on the left. So this tells us where we are in California in terms of board seats. So in fact, Latinos are 40% or nearly 40% compared to 37% of the Caucasian white population. So as you know, in California, this is, our state here, we are larger, yet only 13% of California boards have Latinos on those boards. And you see the demographics here. So the bottom line is that, this is the most important decision-making table in corporate America. And we launched an effort called Latino Voices for Board Equity to do something about this. We have been engaging on multiple fronts, but what is missing is that we need to apply some social and business pressure, because there's been an effort to add women to the board. We were left out. Now there's an effort for diversity, and we stand a chance to making some gains, but we will be left out unless we apply some pressure. So the goal of Latino Voices is we have 3 objectives. 1, we want to see the numbers triple. 2, we're going to be taking action and writing letters to companies. 3 is that we're going to have a quarterly scorecard. So we want to invite you all and others to be part of this, to track it. Because at the end of the day, what we found is 571 companies in California. We have the names and the list of every single one of those companies, and we're going to be following up. So we've got stats, but more importantly, an action plan so that we have a seat at the table.
Excellent. Patrick Salazar.
Yes, Jose, did you want me just to do a brief intro, or did you want me to talk a little bit about our work and how that connects with the corporate board work?
An intro and your work. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks, Jose, for having me on this panel. Esther's work at the Corporate Directors Association really is the model for how we can track progress on this issue. So I just want to make sure folks go to her website and look at that. I'm the executive director and founder of Latinos for Leadership, Excellence, and Diversity, or Latinos Lead, as we're known. Our work has focused on the nonprofit sector, and this is a very important part of California's economy. And actually, it's one of the more effective ways for professionals to prepare themselves for corporate board roles is on nonprofit boards. This is an excellent venue for learning governance practice, for learning leadership roles in a board dynamic, which can be quite different from almost any other business setting is in the boardroom. And a lot of senior Latino professionals who serve on corporate boards have mentioned in a variety of publications that it was their nonprofit board service that helped prepare them for corporate board work. And not just in practice, but also in terms of the networks that you build when you're on a nonprofit board. And when we talk about nonprofits, a lot of times folks will think, oh, okay, my church or maybe the local storefront charitable organization. But in fact, California, specifically Southern California, has some very impressive nonprofit organizations. Overall, in Southern California alone, nonprofits manage assets in excess of $61 billion. And they look at $34 billion a year in revenues. Now, earned revenue from programs, so when you think about maybe a symphony orchestra or a community health center, they charge their users for some of those services. $23 billion a year in Southern California nonprofits alone is earned from services. And so this is a wonderful way to learn about how organizations operate at scale. So when we think about nonprofits, let's not fall into this thinking where they're just some like bake sale level organizations. USC is a nonprofit. Okay, so these are large organizations, very complex, and their boards are often made up of very highly networked individuals, which would be part of your network. I want to encourage also for you to think about some of the nonprofits right here in the LA area. Altamed, for example, it's $800 million in revenue. Southern California Public Radio, they're the management group nonprofit for KPCC. That's a $22 million nonprofit. So there are really some strong opportunities for Latino professionals to learn about governance, to learn about management principles from the board level and in the nonprofit sector. And on the talent pool for corporate boards and nonprofit boards is heavily overlapped. A lot of nonprofits, the most appealing type of corporate or of board candidate for them is the same as the board candidate for a for-profit. Folks with finance or accounting, communications background, lawyers, all sorts of levels, all sorts of types of expertise are desired by both sectors. I want to say too that nonprofit board service, aside from being a really solid pathway to corporate board opportunities, presents you with a wide variety of interests. So whether you're interested in the arts, education, health and human services, the environment, certainly civil rights, there are a lot of different opportunities to serve on boards at nonprofits. And again, I think the primary takeaway, Jose, that I want to make sure our audience understands is this is really an effective pathway to look at corporate board opportunities.
Thank you, Patrick. Joseph?
Yeah, thank you to all of you for joining us, and thank you to the panelists for having me on today. My name is Joe Guzman. I'm an associate at the international law firm of O'Melveny and Myers. I'm based in Los Angeles, and my practice there is twofold. I do complex litigation, and then I've had the opportunity to work on a number of really interesting cases where we're hired by corporate boards or nonprofit boards and to conduct internal investigations. And it's been a wonderful experience to advise boards and be a part of that process. I'm relatively fresh in my career. I graduated from law school 5 years ago. And before joining O'Melveny, I had the opportunity to work for two federal court judges, one in Sacramento and then one on the Ninth Circuit. And I bring that up because what I'd like to spend most of my time today talking about is why is it so important that we have Latino representation in board and also just in general when we're talking about senior leadership in all sorts of institutions and organizations. And I will tell you that when I was applying for federal clerkships, I had a much better time and much better opportunities applying to Latino judges than I did any other judges. And I had the opportunity to work for two wonderful Latino judges. And that really set off my career in a way that if I had not had that opportunity, it would have been a little bit of a different career path for me. As Patrick was mentioning, it's also critically important for especially those of us young in our careers to start off with nonprofit board service. And I've had the opportunity to work as a board member for a local nonprofit in Los Angeles called CCMP. And I'm also a trustee member of the Mexican American Bar Association. And so I really just want to highlight today, and especially in my opening remarks, how important it is for people that are younger in their careers to have senior leadership in the companies they work for, the institutions they work for, whatever that be, whether it's corporations, law firms, nonprofits, as mentors, and also as people that have their backs when things go a little bit wrong, right? I think we've all been there where maybe there's a little bit of a mistake, maybe there's a misunderstanding. I can tell you that in my career, when I have senior level people at my firm who are Latino, who go to bat for me, who are able to help out, that is critical. And I think moving forward, as we start to consider how are we going to continue to facilitate wonderful Latino leaders in our communities, it's important to recognize the trickle-down effect of having board members that are Latinos and other senior leaders in corporations and whatever organizations we work for.
Excellent. As you can see, we have exceptional people who really understand the challenge that's before us, and that is how do we get adequate representation of Latinos on corporate boards of directors, which leads us to our first topic. So we know the data, we understand the challenge both in the private sector and in the nonprofit world. But how does one apply or become prepared to serve in a corporate board or a nonprofit? And if I can start with Esther, that would be great.
Sure. Well, our audience today, I mean, for your own businesses, if you have advisors, what having that extra pair of advisors and people guiding, we all have blind spots, and that just really helps you and a resource to you to grow your business. And so you can think about it as, serving on a board, you're contributing, but I also want you to think about it as, this is a good business opportunity. If you serve on especially a larger nonprofit board, I encourage all of us to also get on some of the mainstream, the Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, YMCAs, those that have can help you expand your network. That will mean that you're connected to people that can, get to know you, and clearly it's good for business. And same thing on the corporate side. This service, we know that our Latino small businesses, you're focused day in and day out on your business and what you need to do. So think about it as an investment in your time to get to know a broader network. And so what at least on the corporate board side, as Patrick was saying, certainly knowing the governance and the role of directors is important, but they look for people with business experience, because today's business environment is challenging. You have more risk, more challenges, and of course with the pandemic, it's even heightened. So they look for folks that have some deep business experience, and as well, guidance and input, things that you can help contribute to the boardroom, other types of expertise, functional expertise. So clearly the Latino business community is a great pool to consider it. And we want to team up with you again to open up more of these seats for more of our people.
Yeah, Patrick?
I think Esther's onto something here. Part of it is follow your interests, right? What do you care about? So if your children are in Girl Scouts, or if you listen to public radio, find out if you can volunteer. Find out if they need help on their fundraising or their communications committees. Every major nonprofit board has committees, and most of the members of those committees are not board members. But committees are where they groom board members. Committees are where they see if you are reliable, to see if you're bringing expertise, to see if you can develop, help them develop networks into Latino professional and other circles. The principal goal of nonprofits and corporates, it's very simple. It's what we all learned in business school, right? New customers, develop audiences. And they see Latino board members as one of their conduits to these markets. So Esther's stats pointed out to the obvious. We are a massive and growing market. Corporations and nonprofits want to tap into those markets. So volunteer on a fundraising or gala committee of a nonprofit in your neighborhood. Ask your golf partner, ask your gym partner, ask your yoga friend what they're doing. Find out where people are serving and serve. You have to make the commitment. They're not, come and hunt you down. Now, if you're Costa de la Rocha or Linda Griego or something, they're going to come hunt you down. There are very few of us that meet that profile. And I'll throw in a plug for our website at latinosleadnow.org. Right now, today, there are 9 nonprofits on our website seeking Latino board members. Go on there, create a professional profile, and if your profile matches with with what they're looking for, we'll set up an introduction. Bottom line is follow your interests, follow what you like, follow what you care about. If you care about reducing gang prevention, if you care about gang prevention, then look at Homeboy Industries. If you care about cleaning up the parks and the beaches, then look at Heal the Bay. So there, or Tree People. There are a lot of different nonprofits tackling every single issue in our community. Look at your church. So generally, it's right there under your nose that you have to be specific, you have to be intentional, and honestly, you've got to give up some time and some effort.
And before I asked Joe to comment on that, it Deborah Reed, who wound up being chairwoman of Sempra Energy Board of Directors, she's an engineer. She became a friend early on when I was doing some work with the California Utilities Diversity Council. And her story is phenomenal. She was working as an engineer for San Diego Gas and Electric. And she was offered a seat at one of the smaller water companies in California, board seat. Getting on that board was probably the most important thing that happened to her, because it allowed her to become acquainted with the corporate board functions, the values, and it's happened that that company was successful. But that gave her all the initial ingredients, if you will, that made her a very competitive candidate to achieve what she eventually achieved, was to become chairwoman of one of the larger investor-owned utilities in California. And so it's really important to get in early. And so from that perspective, we have to encourage our young people. And so, Joseph, if you could please share your perspectives on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for that, Jose. I would phrase it in there's two factors here, right? There's the push factor and there's a bit of a pull factor. On the push factor, if you are interested in serving in a board, a nonprofit board, or having a future in corporate board service, you do really need to hustle. And I think a lot of young professionals, whether they're in business or law or nonprofits or anything else, they're already exceptionally busy. And if you have the opportunity, though, to stretch a little bit further, it's a great opportunity, and you need to start a little bit early, I think. You need to start earlier than you think you might want to start. And hopefully your organizations are supportive of that, because unfortunately, I think for a lot of the younger Latino community, when you are talking about building business and building your resume and building your reputation in the community, a lot of our folks, unfortunately, start without a lot of family connections, at least compared to some of their peers. In the law firm world, it's probably worse than ever, because we have a lot of folks who come from families, generations of lawyers who have the business connections, whether they're from their prep schools or other things. And those kinds of relationships lead to clients later on down their career. And so what I've been telling a lot of my membership of our Latino attorneys network is, you do really need to start early. And it's an important business strategy to start early and kind of put your name out there, because it is going to require us maybe to hustle a little bit extra, because we're not going to have a lot of those natural connections. So that's kind of the push factor, I think. And the second thing is, in my experience, to be honest, the pull factors are really important. It has taken other leaders in the community to reach out to me at times, to reach out to our organizations that I'm a part of, and ask us to get involved. And I think my message on that is that it's really important for active mentorship, from those that are senior from us, that identify young talent and want to cultivate that, and want to push those of us that are younger in our careers to really stretch ourselves and recognize that that kind of active mentorship goes a long way, and can create a pretty transformative change in a person's life, and in turn in a community's life.
Very well said. One thing that was not mentioned, at least in the corporate side of the private sector, I know that some of my friends who sit on corporate boards are making $250,000, $260,000 a year in their participation in some of these larger companies, and so it can be, certainly help the financial aspects for any household, but that's clearly a great opportunity. In addition to that, you make some exceptional contacts, and they're either for your personal efforts or things that you may be able to help the community out. It's really a wonderful opportunity. So this is a really important thing that's happened in California with AB 979 that affects the 600 plus corporations in California, many of which, as Esther indicated, don't have any Latinos on their corporate boards of directors, despite the fact that Latinos are 40%, almost half of California is Latino. And it's just incredible that you have so many companies that have absolutely no Latinos. And then those that do have some, the numbers are so small. And especially in places like Southern California or in the Central Valley or even in the Bay Area along the coast. And it just seems like, these companies that are based in California should have some consciousness on not only their interest in business and penetrating the marketplace, but the economic impact that it has on all communities. And everybody wants to live in a quality environment. The way you create that is everybody's successful. And so very important part here. So what should the chambers and other Latino groups do to increase corporate American and nonprofit foundations to appoint adequate numbers of Latinos to their board of directors? And Patrick, I'm going to mix it up a little bit here and ask you to go first.
Well, thank you. I think Esther will agree that one of the complaints that we hear from corporations and nonprofit organizations about why they don't have, one of the excuses or reasons, justifications, why they don't have more Latinos is a pipeline issue. They say, we just, can't find anybody. We tried, we looked. Well, let's remove that excuse. When a chamber or a professional association or a bar association, an employee resource network, they get word of an opportunity, they get word of an organization like the Latino Corporate Director Association or like Latino, spread the word, get the word out. I think it's very important too, and I don't know if the California Chamber has a reciprocal agreement on membership with the mainstream chambers, but last I looked, right, Maria Salinas is the CEO of the LA Area Chamber. Mm-hmm. It's becoming more and more, quote, mainstream of Latinos in power. And I think one of the things is we have to hold our associations and the leadership of our associations accountable to get the word out. I've had great luck with California Hispanic Chamber, with Mexican American Bar Association, and some alumni associations at local colleges and universities to get the word out. And every time I send something to these groups, I see our web traffic go up. It really is, folks. We got to have each other's backs here. We need to spread the word. We need to make referrals. One of the challenges I see in private and nonprofit sectors is that we get into what's called the recycle rut. The same 8 or 10 or 12 prominent Latinos on 3 or 4 boards. Well, that's great. I mean, they get invited, and that's wonderful. We need to groom that next generation. So part of it, I think we need to look to ourselves. Are we mentoring people? Are we making introductions? I'd say an hour of my day, every day, at Latinos Lead is making email introductions, connecting people. We simply have got to do that. If you know a promising young professional somewhere, connect her with the reverend at your church, or connect her with the program officer at the foundation. Make an introduction. Spread the wealth. And that would be my primary piece. And then let me close with this, Jose. Let's not forget the public sector. You mentioned one of your colleagues had been asked to serve on a water board or a water commission. All around our state, we're so lucky here with people and resources. There are parks conservancies. There are labor commissions. There are industrial commissions, insurance commissions, you name it, public safety commissions. Those are also where you can learn governance, make contacts, and introduce yourself to other people who can give you a leg up. You got to serve. You have to put in that time. So don't forget to serve your local city. Heck, go be a poll worker in November. You have to take part in your community, because those are the kind of candidates that stand out with corporations and nonprofits. Are you engaged? Record the Rams game and watch it later. Go out and do your community and your public service. It'll pay off.
Yeah. Esther?
Absolutely agree, Patrick. And, I think one I want to thank the California Hispanic Chamber, because we teamed up with the Chamber early on to write letters of support for AB 979. And again, this is the bill that the governor has signed, that is requiring California companies, those headquartered in California that are publicly traded, to have racial and ethnic diversity on the board. So this is new, and we are going to be tracking it. It's an opportunity, but you can't, as Patrick was saying, you can't wait for you to be asked for this. One of the main things, and we do have a pipeline program. It's called the Board Ready Institute that we run with universities and major corporations, as well as we work with the search firms, the headhunters that have a board practice. We work with private equity because they control a lot of the private companies. We want to see Latinos at private company boards. So we work with the Carlyle's, KKR, Blackstone, TPG, and many others to try and make inroads and open opportunity. And then, as Patrick was mentioning, build the supply. So we have created this precisely to take away the excuse that they can't find Latino talent. The supply is not the issue, but it comes down to us until first we as a community organize and bring people together to say, look, supply is there. Look, we're not the only source, but there's a lot of other places that can help here. But until we do that, they can still bring that excuse up. So that is no longer an excuse. And we have this opportunity in California. But don't wait for search firms or others to come knocking on your door. You have to leverage your network. If you know anybody else that's on a board, it starts with a board profile that we help our candidates build. It looks very different than your business or your other general public profile, because you want to talk about your industry expertise, functional expertise, what kind of P&L, or for some of the companies that are larger, it matters. They do want to see folks that have overseen a company or a P&L of 500 million, a billion or more. And that sounds like a lot, but there's Fortune 3,000 companies or smaller companies. Start with a smaller one and build up that profile to larger ones. Of all of our membership that are on boards, there's only a very small percent that have 3 or 4 more boards. It's, maybe, less than 10 or 12. The rest of the folks have, 1 or 2. Sometimes we hear about just, a few of these people that get on another board, but, so leverage your network, tell them that you're interested, tell them about what you bring to the table. Visit our website. There's kind of some sample toolkits there. We are LatinoCorporateDirectors.org. And to Jose's point and Patrick's point, there could be a utility, a local bank that may not be publicly traded, but that is a good first start. Getting on your first board is the hardest thing. You might get, it's going to take some time. But once you're on the first one, then you're kind of more in the market. That's just how it works. So leverage that network. And again, to Jose's point, you bring your business experience to the table, but also your know-how of Latino culture. There's a story of a Black director on Estee Lauder, not even, maybe even 10 years ago who said, well, why don't we change the makeup color of our makeup to meet our very diverse, Black and brown communities? And at the time, they said, well, there's not a market there. In other words, sometimes you will see things and opportunities for that company that you think, well, this is where it should go. This makes sense. And it makes sense to you, but not everybody's going to see it. So you're adding value with your different perspective. So there's more to say, but happy to chime in some more.
Okay, Joseph.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more with what has been said. And I think the one thing I want to emphasize is I think it's really important as a community that we crystallize the why, right? Why is it important that corporate boards are diverse? And in particular, why is it important that Latinos are part of that diversity? And I wanted to make 2 points on this, which is the first one, which we all kind of know, right? Which is that diverse teams make better decisions. As Esther just pointed out, diverse individuals may identify new opportunities. Diverse individuals, especially serving on California-based companies, have a facility with the language and potentially with the language and the culture, and may be able to kind of develop new business opportunities. Diverse individuals identify different risk, and as corporations are increasingly international, it's important not to overlook the massive Latin American market that is an important part of, I think, most companies' growth strategies at this point. And the second thing I want to bring up is, it's becoming increasingly important, and I think we see this in our everyday lives, that corporations acknowledge and serve not just their shareholders, but also their stakeholders, right? There's this concept of stakeholder capitalism, which identifies that, sometimes it may serve the bottom line to also consider in your business decisions your stakeholders, which could be your employees, your customers, your communities. And it's an increasingly popular and important concept in corporate governance. And I was reading this wonderful study a couple of weeks ago, and I remembered it while I was preparing for this. There's an organization that measures trust all across the world, actually. It's called the Edelman Trust Index. And they found that 87% of their respondents reported that it was important that businesses place stakeholders above stockholders. And they found that 92% stated that it was important for their employer's CEO to speak out about the social issues of their time. That was up from 70% just a year ago. So we saw a 22% increase in employees, believing that it was important that their CEOs speak out on social issues. And those social issues include diversity. They found that 77% agreed that it was important for their employer CEO to speak out about diversity. 62% found that it was important for their employer CEO to speak out about immigration. And again, we see that consumers are increasingly expecting the companies that they purchase items from to align with their values, kind of a phenomenon referred to, right, as belief-driven customers. And with the same study found that 64% of customers identify as belief-driven consumers. And so as we implement these various strategies that Esther and Patrick discussed, it's also, I think, important to remind these boards that diversifying board membership is going to impact their bottom line as well. It's very critical to their business interests going forward. And customers and consumers and employees are shifting, and it's especially part of my generation. I think a lot of generations, and you see this on a regular basis with various boycotts and counter boycotts. And so it is a bottom line issue in addition to an ethical issue.
Joseph, you sound like a board member to me. Let's see, we do have some questions that are coming in, and we want to encourage everybody to, get your questions in here, because these talented people are here right now. They can answer your questions. And here goes the first one. How do we get more Latino appointments for-profit boards, especially for social media and high-tech companies where we need the visibility?
I'm happy to get started on that. So look, I want to be really frank. It is a time, especially with the California bill, that is calling for diversity on all companies, including those Silicon Valley companies. But, as Jose mentioned, these are paid positions, and people don't want to give up the power. They're not going to necessarily hand it over to us unless we are also applying pressure. So what's happening in our environment right now is that there is dramatic pressure on boards to appoint women, and now there's pressure to appoint African Americans. But there's been community efforts to help build that pressure. We cannot take anything for granted, and that's why we launched this Latino Voices for Board Equity, because we need to apply the social pressure, the business pressure, and it needs to start with our own community. We have to speak up. We can't just wait and say, hey, even, by the way, our consumer numbers, we've been talking about those consumer numbers. That doesn't drive it. The bottom line is that companies will listen, unfortunately, until we kind of start applying the pressure. And so it's not only our organization, we teamed up with MALDEF, with the U.S. Hispanic Chamber, and of course, all the chambers regionally through them, with Unidos US, with Alpha and LULAC. So there's 6 national organizations that are writing letters to these companies. So you're not just getting a letter from us or one small organization, but this is a letter coming from the community saying, ya basta, this is a priority and this is why. So it's that pressure that's helping every other group, and we have to build it ourselves. We're building a coalition in California, and so happy to involve, Patrick and Jose and everyone, because these voices are important. We wrote letters to companies, including, Facebook, Netflix, PayPal, but we also wrote letters to smaller companies to shame them, because when you have a Pollo Loco, a Chipotle Mexican Grill, a Del Taco, some of these companies have all white boards. I grew up in California and in San Fernando, and we know that, our customers and our employees are what drove profits for El Pollo Loco and, many other companies. And yet they can take our dollar but not have a seat at the table. Well, that's unacceptable. And, again, we have to raise our voices and escalate this. So you'll be hearing more about it, because I think we wrote letters 2 weeks ago. We've received responses for some companies, but we might have to escalate this and use social media to say, to raise awareness and call out some of the companies, because that's how it's going to happen. And, I don't want to sugarcoat this, because even though there's a California bill, they can say, well, I've got all these other groups on, I check the box. We're targeting companies, whether they meet the criteria. So they have to have at least one racial ethnic director by the end of 2021, and that goes up to 3 directors by 2023. And it could be Asian, Black, Latino, LGBTQ, and others. So we can still be left out if these other groups are already on the boards. So that's to make our voices heard now. And, this is, we have an opportunity. In fact, our organization, again, in coalition, our data is what made it on the bill to argue for passage. And so we've made a difference, and now we need to take the next steps. So that's what it's going to take. And, we're launching that with so many others with us.
Great. Joseph, do you want to give that establish, or did I jump into the next question?
I think that Esther covered everything that I would say. So the one thing I would add is thank you, Esther, for leading this charge. When I first started learning about all the pressure campaign that you're leading, it's amazing, and it's I can't agree more that the pressure, the political pressure, the social pressure, is the only thing that is really going to get, I think, us a seat at that table.
Although the United Farm Workers did use economic boycott, if you recall, and that was very effective. And so,
well, if we want to go there, we'll go there. There's called an escalation process. So
absolutely.
Don't take anything off the table.
Right.
Yeah.
Don't take anything off the table.
Right. The next question I have: if I'm interested in being a board member, who do I talk to, and where do I go?
Want me to take that? Yeah. Get active in your alumni association of your college or university. Talk to your business professors. Often, corporate folks will go to them and say, "Hey, do you know any promising, up and comers?" Write to your city council person. Make a contact with the district director of your local congressperson or your LA County supervisor. Tell them you want to serve on the land use board. Google it. Find people that can connect you with opportunities. It's quite simple, but you have to kind of put in the legwork, right? Joseph said it. You got to hustle and make yourself known. Get yourself out there. Look at your LinkedIn and your other profiles online, your social media and other profiles. Beef them up. Include, things that you're doing in the community. Because honestly, those are a lot of times those are the keywords that are going to be used when they search for candidates. Again, ask in your social and professional networks. Ask your boss, what would your advice be? I want to get involved in the community, or want to work my way up to board governance. What would your advice be? There's nothing more flattering than to be asked for your advice. So turn it around and ask your boss, ask your alumni network, ask your congressperson, your LA County Sup, or your upstate. You have other county and local representatives. Ask them how you can serve.
I would add, when Patrick mentioned that on his website, you can submit a profile, and that's a good way to go. You could, on our site as well, it's very easy. You can submit an interest form, and in it kind of, ask what your industry and functional expertise and the business that you run, etc. So it's very transparent. On our website, learn how you can become a member or become an executive member for the pipeline program. You can also see the list of who our membership is, so that you kind of get an idea of really your peers that either are aspiring to be on boards or are on boards. And we're at, again, LatinoCorporateDirectors.org.
Okay, Joseph, any comment?
I would just say that I think your first step is what you did today, which is join this session, and I think you're looking at two people that are probably best suited to help you. So reach out to them or reach out to their websites.
I totally agree with that. But one thing I will say about the larger corporate director vacancies, just so you're totally aware, they do a very extensive background check. They check just about everything about you. And so I can tell you that some people don't make that review because they really are looking for, just a very clean, super, very pure type records. And so, and some folks just don't make it. And so just be aware of that. It's very competitive. For the public sector, the nonprofits, I don't know, Patrick probably has a better feel for that, but I've seen it on the private sector. It's tough.
They do background checks as well. I mean, it just goes without saying. Don't stay out of trouble. Don't drink and drive. Pay your taxes. You'll be all right.
And if I could add one thing to that is I think it's important to also recognize maybe some of your weaknesses and try to shore them up, right? If you do not understand accounting or you're not an accountant, try to learn a little bit about it, because that's going to be very valuable skill set to serve on a board. And so, as always, identify your weaknesses and try to fix them.
And it's quick, Jose, I mentioned going on our website. We were established to be a resource. So we work with the search firms, and now we've only been around for about 4 years. And in the last 2 years, especially with our research, because it's the only one of its kind, we've gotten some more attention. And now we're getting search requests for corporate directors. Last year was about 75. This year we're going at about 100, and we will send possible candidates. So, we are very much in the mix in this space, being a resource as well as kind of maybe leading the charge for the pressure. We have to do all sides. So, we are seeing an uptick. People are interested. We just can't take anything for granted. So we are a resource for search firms, for companies. Our membership is really about paying it forward and opening up the door for others. We call on them. They send us referrals to say, hey, someone called me about a board opportunity. It's something I have a conflict I can't take on. Can you work with them, this company or search firm, to get them some candidates? So that's moving along. And I think there is a real opportunity in California, and they're going to be looking. We don't have that huge demand yet, and where they're really looking for us. There is for women and Blacks. We have to create that. I don't want to also paint a rosy picture in any way, but we also work with, for example, Goldman Sachs, New York Stock Exchange. Goldman Sachs announced an effort. They're not going to take any company public through the IPO unless they have diversity on the board, at least one member this year.
That's outstanding. Yeah, that's great.
By next year.
We've got less than 1 minute, so I'm gonna, I'm really sorry about this.
To give them candy.
I apologize for that, but folks, thank you very much for your questions. I'm sorry we're not able to answer all of them. As you can see, this is a stellar team right here. I want to personally thank the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce for hosting this incredible discussion, and invite you to take a look at AB 979. And here you have two incredible people that are heading up these efforts in the nonprofit world and the for-profit world. And I want to thank you very much, panel members. You did really outstanding. And with that, we'll conclude our panel discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jose.
Thank you, Jose.
Thank you, everybody.